Hey everyone, welcome back to Happy Life, Better Life. Thank you so much for those of you who have joined our community here. We support and try to encourage those who are starting over in their lives after going through a divorce or separation, especially those in their 40s and 50s and beyond, because it can be a really challenging time to do those things. Um, because, starting over in your 40s and 50s can feel like a lot of hard work because many of us have been married for, uh, you know, 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years for some people. And having to start over again at that point in your life, most of the time is not something that you planned on or were prepared for. So I wanted to talk about some of the challenges, some of the negatives, the things that people often don't want to discuss about starting over in your 40s and 50s. So, the first thing is starting over in general. Starting over in general, sometimes we don't even know where to begin, especially if we didn't have a plan B. Most of us, we hoped that we were going to be married until death did us part. That was the plan. We didn't have another plan set aside. So starting over in and of itself can be very scary, very daunting, just because we were not prepared. Um, Moving. A lot of times when separation and divorce takes place, somebody ends up moving. And it can be challenging if you're the one staying in the home, if you don't have all the all the financial support to be able to afford everything. And also, if you are the one who has to move, finding a place that you can afford because um, there are challenges or can be challenges financially depending on where you were. If you were someone who worked part time, who was mainly the homemaker, then you might not have had a bank account that was suitable for all the changes that are taking place. If you were someone who already had their own career, who already, was in a job and was already doing well financially, then you will fare better than those who were not and who are now experiencing a financial deficit. But even if you were working or were not working, your household income is most likely much less than what it was in a two income household. So, number one, starting over. Number two, moving. Number three, the financial deficit that can be incurred. So, number four, I'm kind of looking at a few points that I had put down that I didn't want to forget. How about not having a significant other in general? So, let me share my personal story here in that regard. I probably shared this in one of my other videos, but I remember the first time I was filling out like paperwork for a job or something like that, or for insurance, and I got to the question like, who's your emergency contact? And I'm going to be honest, that was something I just didn't even have to think about it for years. It was always my spouse. It was always my spouse. So when I got to the point where I no longer had my spouse, I had to really think, well, well, who do I put for this now? You know, I had three kids. I had a brother. I had a brother and two sisters. I had my mom and dad. And now I had to figure out, okay, well, who's going to be the best person for them to reach if something happens to me? And I got to say, that in itself was like a rude awakening that I no longer had that significant other to rely on. Um, there was a time when I was really ill with COVID, and I had to go to the hospital. And so when I was at the hospital and I'm in the waiting room and I'm there, and my children did call and say, Mom, do you need me to come? Do you need me to come? But they have significant others, they have children, they have, other things going on. Another one lives out of town and all this stuff. And so I was in emergency. Oh my gosh, I think that particular time, I think I was there for literally about 13 hours. I think I got there at 12 in the afternoon and I left sometime after midnight. I had been there all day by myself. And I have to say that that was not fun. It wasn't. There is a different kind of comfort when you have your significant other there with you. Um, it's a different kind of comfort when you know that this person knows your medical history. They can say, yes, that happened. No, she hasn't had this or whatever. There's a different kind of comfort in that. And so these are moments when you become very aware that you're no longer married, that you don't have a significant other anymore. Um, let's see. I think these are things that we don't often think about, and I bring these up only because I feel like sometimes sometimes some of us have really legit reasons for having to separate or go through divorce. And then there are times when people just they don't work at it. I say often that people don't have a certain stick to itiveness that it seemed like older generations, even before mine and stuff had. They had a commitment to, stay together. We're going to have each other's backs. And I won't say that all those situations were perfect because they're not. We know that some of our predecessors, grandparents, great grandparents were in some precarious situations, you know. Um, but I guess that was just what they did. That is not the case anymore. People today, I don't know, they get divorced over things that maybe they could have actually worked through. That's not everybody, but that is some. So, we talked about not having a significant other, um, navigating the world as a single woman. I think that would be my final thing. Navigating the world as a single woman. To me, there is a different type of security that you have when you have a significant other, especially if they are a good significant other. Like I've known women who've had husbands who would put gas in their car because they didn't want their wives to have to do it. They check the oil, they check all the fluids, make sure everything was good before they were going on a road trip because they didn't want their wife to be traveling and have something go wrong that could have been avoided. There's a certain security in that type of thing, and I am all for that. Um, I remember there was a time, probably about 2 years or so after my ex and I had separated and so forth, and there was a time when I just really longed for the conversation of talking to a male voice. I remember that. And, just the conversation, just any kind of conversation, could have been about anything. It could have been banter, it could have been anything. But there was a time when I remember longing for that conversation and not having to be like my son or my brother or, something, but just a conversation. And even that became important. But these are things that people don't often say. These are things that women won't often tell you that they actually miss. Let's see. So another thing I remember, even physical touch, missing physical touch, like it had been a couple years there. But when I had experience, well, I should say, I'm sorry, it had been a couple of years that I had gone without experiencing um, like physical touch, that kind of thing for me. And just basically, um, not necessarily sexually is what I'm talking about, but just in general, whatever. And I remember this one day, um, my daughter and I were going to church, and I lived up in the mountains, and it was a lot of snow. And we had been shoveling, and because I had to shovel the car out, and we got in the car and we drove to church. And I remember we were like, when we were coming inside, I was just like so happy to be inside the building because it was so cold outside. Like that winter was the worst winter that I think I had experienced. We're talking about temperatures um, that had reached like 20 below, that kind of thing. And at that point, you weren't even really supposed to be outside, and they would tell you, you couldn't have any, if you were going to be outside, only be out there if you absolutely had to, like you had to go to work or something, and to make sure all your skin was covered. You weren't supposed to have any exposed skin because it was that bad. And that was the first time I experienced my locks on my car actually freezing up and couldn't get the key inside. And I had to like literally, thankfully I had left one of the back doors unlocked and I had to climb over the back seat. Like these temperatures were frigid. Couldn't get the gas thing to open. You push the button inside and it pops open so you can, fill up the gas tank, and it wasn't opening. And I had went in and told the attendant, and he said, "Oh no, I got you." And he came out with like a cup of water and poured it over the gas tank, and it just like evaporated like in a puff of smoke immediately. I had never seen anything like it. And he was like, "Yeah, you just don't want to put this on your windows because it will crack your windows." But he said, "No, you can do this for the gas tank." And it was an experience. So anyway, that particular day, I remember we went into church, and I really loved the people that attended the church that I went to at that time. And one of my friends there, it was a male friend of mine, and we'd always laugh and joke about stuff. And so when we came in, it was in the midst of I think it was the greeting time where they were greeting each other. So thankfully everybody was already like standing up and moving around and stuff. And so when I came in, I happened to run right into them first. And they shook my hand and they were like, "Oh, Tasha, your hands are so cold." And they took my hand in their hand and just kind of, did like this to kind of warm them up. And I just about melted. I just about turned into a puddle on the floor because it was like, oh my gosh. Yes, that's how I felt about it. It was such a huge thing to me. And it's funny because that was years and years ago. I'm telling you, that had to be about, I don't know, I guess about 8 years ago or something. And I still remember it. I still remember it because it was just so, I don't know, caring to me. So anyway, these are some of the things that can happen, things that you can experience. I try to be real and honest about things. At a certain point, you have moments that can be hard and challenging. I was reading one of the comments of someone who, I think she divorced in her 50s, and she says she's now 61, and that she never expected to be alone in her 60s. And I just wanted to encourage you, listen, I read an article the other day, and there was a couple who got married. They were like in their 70s and stuff. And listen, 60 is not what it used to be. and I'm only saying that to be encouraging in the way that how we treat our bodies, how we take care of our bodies, how we take care of our health, the way that we think, our mind, how we think about ourselves, how we think about the world around us, and what we're doing to enjoy our lives. It all makes a huge difference in our vitality. And so, what I did also, so I didn't think about being alone as much. Number one, I did learn to do things by myself, especially once my daughter had went away to college and it was just me. And I went through a little depression there. I'm not gonna lie. I went through a depression because I was an empty nester and it did not look like what I expected it to look like. I was like, man, this time was supposed to be the time. This is when, my husband and I were supposed to be like happy and saying, okay, we're gonna travel now. We're gonna do things now because we don't have any more children to raise who are living in the home because everybody's grown and out. So it was supposed to be a great time. And it did not look like what I expected. It was very different. I never expected to be alone. Now the truth is, I didn't have to be like alone if I didn't really want to be. I mean, there were things I could have done, or people I could have gotten involved with or whatever, but I wasn't ready to just settle for anything or anyone. So yes, I was particular about what I wanted in my life. And but I had good people. I had good people. I had a good group of people around me, be it my brother and his wife. I can't tell you, I have been a third wheel. I've been a third wheel for many years, you know. And sometimes, even now, these days, I still am because I will still go out with my brother and his wife. Um, I will do things with my daughter. I will do things to keep me occupied. I took painting classes because that's something I wanted to do. Things that interested me. I was even going to take piano lessons because it was something that I wanted to learn. Also, you can even learn a language. There are things that you can do to make yourself happy. Anytime we're investing in ourselves, we are enriching our own lives. There are things that I did, like going to the movies by myself, because sometimes there would be something out I wanted to see. And it wasn't like now where you can just order everything at home, pretty much. You don't have to go out so much anymore when there's a new movie out, because it'll be, you can watch it at home like in 2 weeks, basically. So, but I would go out to the movies by myself. I would go out to dinner by myself. And at first it felt awkward because I was aware that I was alone. But then, after a while, it was like I got used to it. I would go, and if it was something that was funny, I still laughed just like I was with somebody else, and other people. And in certain ways, it almost felt like I was more of part of the community of people who were there, watching the same thing that I was watching. And I just learned to have fun with it. Um, Basically, starting over is not an easy thing. And there can be small things that will just kind of remind you. I remember, like, I was so used to wearing a ring. I mean, I had wore a wedding ring and stuff for like 20 some years. And so I remember like thinking I'm not a wife anymore. And it made me feel less than, you know. And so it was so funny to me because I did a vision board. And on that vision board in the center, and this was actually after I was already separated and everything, I had a large diamond ring in the middle of my vision board. And then I had all these other goals around it. And I don't know why I put the wedding ring in the middle of my vision board. Number one, there were prongs that held up like 3 diamonds around it that reminded me of my 3 kids. And I don't know, that appealed to me. It reminded me of family. But also, I think too, just because in general, I've always thought of myself as a wife. as a wife. But at the end of the day, you are strong enough and smart enough to do whatever it takes for you to make it in this journey. And don't give up on love. Sometimes love comes when we least expect it. And sometimes we're looking for it to come from the left and it comes from the right. Sometimes we're looking for, you know, things to come. I don't know. It's like most of the time they say that when you're not thinking about it, it comes when you're not thinking about it. But also I say prepare for it. Prepare for it. If it's what you really want, visualize that thing. That's what I say. Visualize it. But make sure that your heart is prepared to love again. Get his and her mugs and say, I'm preparing for that one. Clear out a drawer or a closet for them. If you really believe that that's what you want, then you visualize that thing. Prepare for it. Believe in it. Don't give up on it. Doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter. You could be 75. There's people even getting married at 80. It happens. But in the meantime, for you, just be realistic about it and also prepare for it if that's what you really want. And make sure that you're ready. Make sure that you're ready to love. So I wanted to share this. I hope that this has been helpful. Please comment, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I will look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you for spending this time with me. Have a great day. Bye-bye.